touchdown, time to get Jalen his ring. You don't really want to start a thing. This a Bird Gang Nation, baby. It's a Philly thing. Hater, and you looking like you type trash. I'm just here calling on Philly the podcast. And we can call a man dog or watch Miles score off the handoff. Rest of the division, your man saw Jackson like Sean, hunting like Randall. Season here, early time to do them in. Your boy Philly Fresco. Thanks for tuning in. What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Joe Castro, aka Philly Fresco, and it is Philly the podcast, man. I got my boy here with me as always, Brandon, but today is about the mock draft. Today is about the Chargers. So I had to go and because you know how we're doing with this mock draft. We go get the scouts, we go get the people that know about their team, and they come tell you the truth. So I went and got my guy Steven from Guilty as Charged podcast. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. Happy to talk some ball today. You know, I love the draft. I'm always down to do mock drafts. So, you know, I'm happy to be here and can't wait to talk some ball.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, man. When I saw your channel, I was very excited to get you on here because you definitely know what you're talking about. So that's what I love to see. So before we do get into any of this draft talk, let them know where they can find you, what you do over there on Guilty as Charged.
Yeah, so our main focus is doing podcasts. You know, we're barely just getting into the YouTube business a few months ago, but we do release our episodes on every Monday, Thursday, and Saturday. You can follow us on Twitter at Guilty as Charged Podcast. And yeah, we're on YouTube and every podcast platform as well.
Definitely. And we'll have all the links to your all the links in the description to your podcast and to your YouTube channel. So definitely, guys, go check that out. So let's get into it a little bit. All right. Let's talk about the Chargers season. How are you feeling overall? Like, you know, we're past the Herbert. Herbert had a good season. How are you feeling about this team?
Well, right now there's a lot of excitement on Chargers Twitter, right? Because, you know, if you followed the Chargers at all, you know that they were pretty poorly coached last year. And, you know, even though Justin Herbert was having this huge season and put up a lot of numbers, you know, I personally and most Charger fans never really felt like they were able to reach their ceiling because the coaching was just so bad from Anthony Lynn and company. And so they're, you know, the new coach, Brandon Staley, and the franchise, they're all saying the right things. You know, they're innovating the franchise has been the theme of the offseason. And so right now, everything is fine and dandy. Everything is roses, but you know we'll have to see how it pans out on the field. But so far, everyone is pretty excited about where the Chargers are headed.
So, what were your initial thoughts on just watching Justin Herbert this year? I mean, you've had Phillip Rivers forever,
yeah.
And then you have this rookie quarterback come in after the whole Tyrod Taylor debacle with his punctured lung or whatever it was. How was that? Actually, let's bring it to that. How was that?
It's actually, never mind.
I'm talking about it out loud.
That game was wild, man. Like, you know, I thought at first, like when I saw Justin Herbert, you know, walk on the field, I thought like, oh, like this was the plan all along. Like these guys, you know, they just wanted to make sure that Justin had enough time for the playbook. And then, you know, 5 minutes into the broadcast, they're like, oh no, Tyrod Taylor is hurt. We don't know what's going on, but there's something with his lungs. And you know, they said that Justin had like 10 minutes or whatever to prepare for the first start. And it was just wild. And to see him go out and play the way he did that day, I was very skeptical of the selection. I'm not going to lie. Everybody who knows me knows that I was pretty skeptical. I wanted them to draft an offensive lineman and kind of just see what they had in Tyrod Taylor. Super glad that they did not listen to me. Because Justin Herbert has obviously panned out and exceeded any kind of expectations that really anyone had. Like even the people that really like Justin Herbert coming out, there's no way anyone could have seen what he did last year happening. It was just, you know, he was so much fun to watch. And really, he was the only bright spot throughout the season because, you know, they went 7-9, but they won their last 4 games. And so, you know, going 3-10, it was not a fun first 2/3 of the season. And then they finally started figuring out how to win some games. And I think that was huge for Justin's development in particular.
Definitely. And you brought up some of the coaching. You brought up, you know, poor coaching. We in Philadelphia know a little bit about that. We definitely have to incur that. So from an outsider's perspective, or not really from an outsider's perspective, I guess, what do you think with this new coaching staff you got coming in there and just kind of new faces you got coming in there? where do you think you're headed? Like, what do you think is the direction of your franchise? Obviously, you have a new quarterback, right? But is it completely going to be built around his strengths, or do you think that there's something that the new guys kind of have in their mind to go with?
Yeah, you know, everyone in the media kind of was making a big deal about the Chargers hiring a defensive-minded head coach, but he played quarterback in college, and so he has that background. And right now, he's saying all the right things, that they're going to build an offense around Justin Herbert. They got all these assistant coaches from different backgrounds. They've got a Sean Payton disciple, a Kyle Shanahan disciple. Obviously, Brandon Staley himself learned with Sean McVay. They got someone from the Packers staff. So they have all these different bits and pieces from the best offenses in the league. And, they're all saying that they're going to form the offense around Justin Herbert's strengths. And that's, it's been music to our ears, because none of us that watched the team last year really felt like they were playing to Herbert's strengths as best as they could. They would dabble every once in a while in doing some quarterback run plays and bootlegs and things like that. That's where he excels with his legs, but it wasn't super common. It wasn't super frequent that they would do those kind of things. And they really were trying to get him to be a pocket passer, which he can do. But we just wanted to see more diversity in the offensive game plan, and it just didn't really come to fruition. So if the new coaching staff can do that, then we'll all be happy, because, we see what, the Chiefs and the Buccaneers and the Saints do every single week. It's very diverse. There's a lot of movement, and that's just not something that the Chargers were doing previously.
Yeah. So what was one major thing that kind of turned you off about Anthony Lynn? Like, what was his major problem that you're kind of like, I'm glad this guy's out of here and I'm ready for this fresh start?
Well, when they were all on Hard Knocks, I think everybody was kind of excited to see what he would do with a younger team, because the team from 2019 and 18-17 was a lot of veterans, obviously led by Phillip Rivers. And so all of us were kind of just curious to see what he would do with a young team, but he didn't really lean into their strengths, and he's very stubborn, really set in his ways. And that's something that has come out, by his own words from his press conferences in Detroit, has just kind of showed that he hasn't really been able to be a coach that adapts on the fly. And, the end of game lack of communication between him and the offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, which I'm sure we're going to talk about. It was just on display every single week. I was thinking that maybe they would be able to keep him, but then, they go up to Buffalo and they run a quarterback sneak with 13 seconds left, no timeouts, and the entire offensive line is pass blocking. And they run a quarterback sneak, and then the next week, they're doing this 2-minute drive. I believe they ate up 7 minutes of the clock, and they get down 3rd and 1, 13 seconds left again, no timeouts, and they call a run play, and they don't get the first down, and then they don't have time to clock it, don't have time to get a field goal. And so really just the clock management from Anthony Lynn and the lack of communication between him and Shane Steichen, it was constant throughout the entire season, and then just kind of, boiled over in those 2 games.
Now, you did say, and I'm glad you said his last name before we had to. So it is Shane Steichen.
Yeah, it's Steichen. Yeah.
Me and him were in the back room, is it Shane Steichen? I don't know. We were like, let's just hope he says it first. So
yeah.
Can you give us a little? So I want to say this before I do ask this question. So I said it in my live this morning during lunch that we were talking, on Twitter, and I was like, I kind of want to ask you about Shane a little bit. And your first response was, "Do you want me to be honest?" So I want you to be honest. Let me know what you saw in Shane. What can we expect from Shane?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think his opportunity in Los Angeles, to me, it just came too soon. Because they had Ken Wisenhunt there, and Ken had a great relationship with Phillip Rivers, and that's really kind of the main reason that he stuck around. And so in 2018, when things were going so good, they fired him, and then it just didn't really get any better. And so they promoted Shane, and Shane had only been with the team for 2.5 years, and it didn't go well that season. But you could kind of give him some leeway, right? Because, he's an interim offensive coordinator. He's really young. How much control does he have? And then that offseason, everybody was like, well, he's super smart. Everybody in the building thinks he's this great offensive mind. And there was a lot of, positive things about Shane Steichen. And early on in the season, you could see glimpses of his ability as a creative play designer. He was doing a lot of creative things. But just as the season went along, and I don't know if this was Anthony Lynn saying like, "Hey, let's rein it back. Like, let's stop doing these kind of things." It wasn't pretty, and some of the end game communication stuff does fall on Shane Steichen. Like, as a play caller, we all know watching the game with 13 seconds left that you can't call a run play, and so Shane Steichen should know that. And regardless of the lack of communication from the head coach, like you have to know better than what he was doing. And so I don't know if the Eagles I don't know who's going to call plays. I assume Sirianni will call plays just because he's never had that opportunity. So Shane Steichen is very well regarded by Philip Rivers. Rivers had a great relationship with him. And that really is the most important thing, right? Is in terms of an offensive coordinator that's not going to call plays, like what is his relationship going to be like with Jalen Hurts or whoever the Eagles end up with that quarterback? I don't really know what your guys' thoughts are on that, but
it might be me at this point. It might be
So I think he's a young, bright offensive mind. It just really was a poor marriage with him and Anthony Lynn. And, I would be curious to see what he would have been able to do had he been able to stick around without Anthony Lynn. But I do like the direction that the Chargers are going in. And I think, him landing in Philadelphia where he's not going to have to call plays, I think is a good spot for him too.
Definitely. Now I want to switch a little bit over from the coaching. I want to talk about your cap situation and maybe some moves that you might be looking at in free agency.
Yeah.
Now, for the people in the chat, all my Eagle fans, cap is something that basically you have when you don't overpay all your players. And then you can go get free agents who are players who are no longer under contract. We have to kind of explain that because we don't have any cap. So we might have forgot what that might be. So if you can maybe go over some people you might be, having your eye on, or, some of your free agents even.
Yeah, so, for me, the first priority this offseason has to be retaining Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry, he's taken some slack over the past couple of weeks from the media because he's not a super explosive tight end, and he's not. But, the way that the Chargers are using him is essentially you go over the middle and you're Justin Herbert's safety valve, and that's about it. And so he's a much more versatile player than what he showed last year. And to me, like, there's so much. The entire coaching staff is brand new, and I'm not really interested in taking away a key offensive piece from Justin Herbert. And so I understand there are some Chargers fans who would rather see them, not spend $10 million on a tight end, and I get that. But to me, it's just you got to keep some kind of continuity around Justin Herbert, and if that is the skill positions, then you got to do that. In terms of outside free agents, it's got to start with interior offensive linemen. And, Corey Linsley, the Packers center, that would be an amazing signing. I think Joe Thuney probably is a little too expensive for my liking. He's going to command $14-15 million, which is just not really interested in paying that much money to a guard. So, like lower tier signings like John Feliciano from the Bills, or Larry Warford, who didn't play last year because he opted out from the Saints. I think those would be good signings. There's some other lower tier. Nick Martin just got released today from the Texans. So I think in terms of free agency, it's got to be offensive line. In terms of the draft, it's got to be offensive line because the Chargers last year were the worst unit in the league in every single metric. ESPN's pass block win rate, run block win rate, Pro Football Focus is pass block efficiency, pressures given up, sacks given up. They were the worst offensive line in the league. And so they got to go all in on building that group up this year.
So I think from what you're saying is that the offensive line is just not that great for the Chargers.
No, that's not.
Yeah. But outside of that, are you comfortable with your guys' skill position players? Like, because I know you have Eckler, but if he goes down, like, are you comfortable with who's behind him? Keenan Allen's getting up there in age. Like, what's your thoughts on all the skill positions out there in LA?
I definitely want them to seek an upgrade. I'm not too interested in them acquiring a free agent receiver, just because, you could get like a lower tier signing, someone like a Kendrick Bourne, or take a super low flyer on John Ross, I think makes a lot of sense. In terms of a free agent running back, I think Mark Ingram coming back to work with his former offensive coordinator or quarterback coach, now Chargers offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi would make a lot of sense. Jamal Williams, the Packers running back, that would make a lot of sense to me as well. I'm definitely not to the point where I'm like 100% okay with the skill players around Justin Herbert, but it is going to be really interesting because they drafted Joshua Kelly from UCLA in the 4th round last year. He was Anthony Lynn's guy. That was Anthony Lynn's pick, like 100%. That was Lynn's pick. So I don't know if he's going to stick around. I don't know if he's going to be, the second year leap kind of player, but if they do go after a free agent skill player, I think running back makes a lot more sense than receiver.
Now, I know you were talking about, having to retain Hunter Henry, but there is a tight end in Philly that might be, out on the market.
Yeah.
He's not $10 million or $11 million. He's only $8. Just to quickly go over that, how would your thought process be on them maybe, taking a stab at Zach Ertz? I know you guys were kind of a team that was mentioned in that.
Yeah, I think if they do lose Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz is the best, consolation prize, right? Because that's really not up for debate. There's Gerald Everett. I'm not really super interested in him in terms of a free agent. Jonnu Smith, I don't think he's going to become available, but we'll have to see. And then the draft class in terms of tight end is not very good either. Obviously, you have Kyle Pitts, but outside of that, it's not really my favorite. So Zach Ertz definitely is the best backup plan in case Hunter Henry does leave. And if they're paying Ertz 8 instead of Henry 11, and they can save that $3 million and go pay for another offensive lineman, then I think that makes a lot of sense. But I just would wonder, because Ertz wanted an extension, and I'm not really interested in paying him an extension that's super expensive. I would just rather pay the younger Hunter Henry that extension. So I think trading for him, again, best backup plan in case of emergency, but Hunter Henry, I think just retaining him makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I can understand that.
So we've been talking about the offensive a lot. What about your defense? What are some thoughts about the defense? Your defensive line, I feel like, is pretty stout with Joey Bosa and Ingram. Like, what are your thoughts on the defense?
Well, Ingram is a free agent, and he's been hurt. It's okay. No one's really talking about it, but he had 0 sacks last year, and sacks aren't everything, and I get that. He had a decent amount of pressures, but he had 0 sacks. Like that's a big problem, and so Brandon Staley has kind of said that they're not going to go fully all into the 3-4 defense. I kind of have a hard time believing that personally, because that's what Brandon Staley knows. So getting a little more athletic out there, whether that's through the draft or through free agency, makes a lot of sense. Getting a true outside linebacker opposite of Joey Bosa. Obviously, there's the big connection of Leonard Floyd, right? He's played for Brandon Staley in Chicago and in LA. That makes a ton of sense on paper. And I would be okay with that. If that's the big free agent acquisition, then for sure. In terms of other things, I think at linebacker, they're pretty set. I wouldn't mind upgrading the safety position, whether that's John Johnson, again, another Ram free agent who I think could be a big signing for them, or, taking a flyer on a cornerback, like an AJ Bouye or Patrick Peterson, I think makes a lot of sense for them as well.
AJ Bouye, I forgot he was out there. So let's like transition a little bit to the draft. So what do you think? I know you talked about, the needs on offense and defense, but what do you think is the goal of this draft? Like, what are you trying to get out of this? Are you trying to get starters? Are you trying to get depth? Is this build for the future? What do you think is the goal from this?
Well, the Chargers roster is very top heavy. You have Bosa and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler and Justin Herbert. And, you could argue, obviously, Derwin James if he's healthy, but and Kenneth Murray, who took a big step forward at the end of the season last year. But there's not a lot of depth on really any kind of position. So they need starters. They need depth, and especially on the offensive line. They really need everything in terms of offensive line. But I wouldn't mind, again, getting a receiver who could, maybe compete with Mike Williams for, that second receiver kind of action. If Hunter Henry leaves, obviously tight end becomes a big need. But really, I think the focus for the Chargers just needs to be, building up the trenches on the ball. Switching schemes from 4-3 to 3-4. They're going to have to get some defensive linemen in there. Again, if they lose Ingram, they'll have to get an outside linebacker. So the trench is really, in building that up, is my personal focus, and I think it should be for the Chargers too.
Definitely. Now, one question I love to ask, and I'm going to ask it before Brandon does because he loves stealing my questions. But the one question I love to ask is, we all have that one thing, that we obviously have our painted picture of our beautiful draft, right? How we want it to go. But we also, especially as fans, we all have that one thing that we just do not want to see happen at our pick. So is there one thing, you just don't want to, if it happens on draft night, it's going to drive you crazy? Is there anything like that?
Well, it's taking a receiver, man. And I know a lot of people have mocked Jalen Waddle to the Chargers. And, on paper, I get that because, you're adding more weapons. And Jalen Waddle is the perfect receiver to play with Justin Herbert and his rocket arm, right? But they just have so many other needs that I would be so upset if they took another first-round receiver. They just took Mike Williams in the first round 3 years ago. And so passing on an offensive lineman, a cornerback, which again kind of is an underrated need for the Chargers, or a defensive end, which is a big need for the Chargers. In general, I don't like seeing receivers taken in the first round because the value of receiver is so great in the second and third round, and that's kind of been proven historically. And Jalen Waddle is a great prospect, but the last thing the Chargers need right now is like a John Ross situation where it just doesn't work out. And Mike Williams has been fine. He provides a lot of highlight catches because he's a great jump ball guy, but they drafted him 7th overall, and he has not produced like a 7th overall selection. And so the last thing that the Chargers need right now is another receiver going in the first round that doesn't produce like a first round receiver should.
Funny you say that. Like, you're saying like, oh, we just drafted one 3 years ago. Meanwhile, up here in Philly, we're claiming like we need another one when we drafted a first round receiver last year.
Yeah, it is funny how that works out, man. And Jalen Reagor, I love Jalen Reagor last year, or Rager, I don't know how you say it, but I really liked him coming out last year. It's kind of a shame they didn't just draft Justin Jefferson, but that's, I guess, another topic for another day.
Don't poke the Lions. Don't poke the live chat, man. They're actually calm today. Don't poke the Lions. So one more thing I want to ask you before we get into the actual pick. I know the overall consensus when we're doing this. Obviously, we're on pick 13 now. I think everybody has kind of said that they would want to trade back if that was the possibility. As we get a little bit deeper into the draft, is that still something that would be on the back of your mind?
Yes, I'm always in favor of trading back, especially this kind of year where the hype for Mac Jones has just been, going crazy. And then some guy at NFL Network had Justin Fields drop all the way to like 24 to the Steelers, which would be outrageous. I don't really think that's going to happen, but trading back is always a great idea. They traded up back into the first round last year to get Kenneth Murray, and I think that was kind of a big mistake in terms of the draft capital that they lost. Like I said, really excited about Murray, but just kind of trading up for him didn't really make a lot of sense in terms of losing that draft capital. And so trading back would be amazing, because the positions of need for the Chargers, for me, are offensive line or edge rusher. And so if you could trade back to, like 19 with Washington, who does need a quarterback, if they do want to trade up for Mac Jones, I think that would make a ton of sense. But it seems more like Washington's kind of in like the win now mode and might go the veteran route. So trading back always makes sense. Everybody thinks that, but it takes two to tango, right? And so, is someone really going to trade up to 13 and grab a quarterback? At this point, it just kind of seems unlikely.
I think if everybody had it their way, it would just be one big game of hot potato, just continuously passing the trade pick back, passing the pick back. So,
did you guys see Mel Kiper's mock draft the other day?
I did not yet. No.
Apparently he has a rule of like, I don't do trades in his mock drafts, but the other day he had 4 trades in the top 10. And so he had all 5 quarterbacks. Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Lance, and Mac Jones all went in the top 10. It was crazy.
Whoa. I've said that I think that the top 4, and my top 4 does not include Mac Jones. I think Mac Jones, I don't know where this hype is coming from. I think he's good.
So weird.
I think he's good. Don't get me wrong. I think he can be really good, but I don't know where he became a top 5 quarterback or top 4 quarterback. But either way, I said that I think the 4 quarterbacks would go in the top 12. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I think that that's very possible. And even, you know, at your spot, I think if we end up where we are right now, I wouldn't be shocked if Bill Belichick was on your phone calling you guys saying, hey,
Yeah.
we want to move up. Because of Mac Jones, honestly, I could see Mac Jones fit what they do probably best. So if they're going to stretch, I think that's the smartest, you know, reach, because I think he would fit what the Patriots do. But yeah, I don't know where Mac Jones came from.
It's bizarre, man. It really doesn't make any sense to me.
God bless him, though. Hey, go get your money, young man. I am not mad at you. So before we get into your pick, is there anybody, you know, in the top 12? I'll go over it real quick for everybody in the chat as well. But as I read these, is there anybody that you're like, damn, I kind of wish he would have fell to me? So let me just go over them real quick. The top 12 so far is Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Devontae Smith, Justin Fields, Penei Sewell, Jamar Chase, Trey Lance, Patrick Surtain Jr., Micah Parsons, Kyle Pitts, Jalen Waddle, and then Caleb Farley. Is there any name that jumps out at you there?
Wait, no one took Slater?
No one took Slater.
Okay. Well, anyways, I think the one player for me that is like under consideration of not going offensive or defensive line is Kyle Pitts. You know, the potential of adding Kyle Pitts to the Chargers and being able, that kind of versatility as a wide receiver tight end hybrid would be very, very tempting. So he is the only player that's non-offensive line, non-edge rusher that I would consider, just because, you know, the kind of upside and versatility that Kyle Pitts adds to a team is just, his upside is so high.
Yeah, I mean, we were all surprised when we were sitting here talking to the two guys we had here for the Cowboys pick, and they went ahead and they were talking how, oh, we do need to upgrade the offensive line. They were making this case for everything, and then they go, but we want Kyle Pitts. So
yeah.
God bless them. They don't shy away from idiocracy. So
and that's the Cowboys. That's the Cowboys mantra, right? Like they just did it last year with CeeDee Lamb. Oh, we need a corner. We need a pass rusher. Nah, we're gonna take a receiver. So honestly, like Pitts to the Cowboys, it makes a lot of sense. I don't know, like if he is there at 10 for the Cowboys, I think we can all pencil that in right away.
Yeah, and I forget who we had on here. Who was it? It was one of the previous picks after Kyle Pitts, so it had to be one of the last two. But he was like, "Wait, they took who? They took Kyle Pitts."
Giants.
Yeah. He was like, "Wait, they took who?" Yeah. So the whole NFC East would be happy if that happened. So let's get to what the people want. You know, shout out to all the channel members that are in the building. I see y'all. But who at number 13? Do the Los Angeles, I was about to say San Diego, Los Angeles Chargers select?
Hey man, it's okay. We just did an interview with a guy from ESPN on our podcast, and he said San Diego Chargers like 17 times, so it's all good. But you know, I honestly thought the Niners guy was going to take Rashawn Slater, so Rashawn Slater will be my selection here. Like I mentioned, you know, the Chargers offensive line was atrocious last year, and so some people project Slater as a guard. I think he can play tackle just because of how smart and athletic and mobile he is. But that kind of versatility, like the Chargers need that. And so, you know, if they're able to go out in free agency and get an upgrade at left tackle, then you can draft Rashawn Slater and you can play him at guard. If they're not, you know, like I said, I think the focus of free agency should be on building up the interior offensive line. And then you can draft a left tackle at 13, which is what they do here with Rashawn Slater, who I love. I was fully prepared to talk about Elijah Vera Tucker because I love Elijah Vera Tucker too. But Rashawn Slater, I think, is just in another tier. You know, you have Penei Sewell, who I think is tier 1. Tier 2 is Rashawn Slater. They're both in their own tiers. And then you have, you know, Elijah Vera Tucker, Samuel Cosmi, Christian Darrisaw, who I think are in the next tier. And so if Rashawn Slater is on the board at 13, it's a no-brainer for me. You take that. You give Justin Herbert his left tackle of the future, or left guard in the case of free agency. And so Rashawn Slater is the biggest no-brainer if he's there.
Definitely. What do you think about that, Brandon?
I think that's a smart pick. You can never really go wrong grabbing one of the top linemen in the draft. I mean, everyone knows that you just need to build that front line. Like you said, once you have a bad line, it's a wrap. Like, it's really hard to run the ball, pass the ball, and whatnot. And that you can't miss on that. If you take an offensive lineman for the future and he's one of the top guys and you're not picking someone that could have got grabbed in like the 3rd round. It's a win-win. It's not the sexiest of picks. It might not get you jumping out of your seat, but when Justin Herbert's throwing for 400 yards a game, and he's blocking well, you'd be happy about that.
He'll definitely do that against the Eagles.
Yeah, I just think like the goal of this offseason, the defense does have some needs, but the goal of the offseason has to be able to maximize Justin Herbert's rookie contract, right? Because we all know, I mean, the Eagles just saw this. Wentz didn't play in the Super Bowl, but the rookie contract of Wentz allowed them to beef up the roster everywhere else around him. And so obviously the Chiefs are seeing that. The Rams saw that with Jared Goff before he became expensive. So the Chargers have to go all in on this, and that starts with building up the offensive line, getting him some protection, being able to run the ball with Austin Eckler and Joshua Kelly or whoever they add in free agency or the draft or whatever. So I would, if they draft an offensive lineman, I am going to jump out of my chair because it's such a need for the Chargers. They haven't really put enough draft capital into the position group, and so getting a guy like Slater at 13 would be huge for the Chargers.
Yeah, and I think Rashawn Slater's been damn near neck and neck, I think is the best way of putting it, with Penei Sewell. And I think, I'm gonna say this is probably a hot take, but I haven't heard people talk about an offensive lineman like this, like, and the way that they talk about Penei Sewell since, what's that guy's name that was like the Hulk? I forget what his name was. He was like a blonde, big dude that played for the Packers. I'm gonna forget, and I'll remember it like as soon as we go off live. But I forget his name. He was on Sports Illustrated, everything.
I saw. I think it was a 30 for 30 on him or something.
Yeah, I forget his name. Shouldn't have brought that up. But either way, it is what it is. We'll see with Penei Sewell. It's one of those. Yeah, there we go. The Incredible Bulk. I forget his name.
Oh.
But yeah, he was taken like second, and he was just jumped out of the gym.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of what people are saying about Penei, is that he's just uber athletic. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust, but haven't heard people talk this highly about tackles since then. But I think that's a great pick. Like both of you said, you got to build with the trenches. So Rashawn Slater, man, I'm not mad at that. I am not mad at that, man. But
yeah, real quick on Penei Sewell, man. Like, when people watch him, you need to keep in mind that the stuff that he was doing on film was happening when he was 19 years old. And so the upside, like, he's going to be 21 when he starts in NFL. He's not even going to be 20. He's going to be 20 in training camp this year. And so the upside here with Penei Sewell is, like, if you built an offensive lineman in a lab, like, Penei Sewell would walk out because he's got great length. He's got great size. He's the most athletic lineman, I think that we've seen in a while. I think him and Tristan Wirfs would probably be the two best athletes that we've seen in a while. And Wirfs had an outstanding season for the Buccaneers. Mm-hmm. And so some people have criticized him for like some certain lacks of technique. And it's like, he was 19 when you were watching him. Like, of course he's not going to be a perfect technician. Like, he's so young. But Rashawn Slater, I would be thrilled with this to pick as well. And same with Elijah Vera Tucker, Christian Darrisaw, Samuel Cosmi. I think this pick just really has to be offensive line.
See, this was going to drive me crazy. This is why I love my channel members. It was Tony Mandridge. That was his name. You could look him up. You'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Thank you. I love my channel members. That just makes me feel better now. I can sleep. So Rashawn Slater going to the Chargers at pick number 13. This was a lot of fun, man. I had a lot of fun talking to you, man. I would love to have you back on the channel if you ever want to. Is there anything you want to say before we get you out of here, though?
No, just any subscribers or likes on our channel would be much appreciated. And I'm definitely down to come on your guys' channel anytime you guys want. This was a lot of fun for me as well.
Definitely, man. And like I said, all of his links will be in the description. And I got my shirt. So if you're trying to get that Philly merchandise, go into the links in the description. There's a bunch of links. Just click them all. I'm telling you, it's going to be a lot of fun. But other than that, you guys know what it is, man. It is Fly Eagles Fly. And we are out here. Peace.